Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait,
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
and brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network and EVT Educational Productions. And Raymond, once again, we're pre-taping. We're actually pre-taping a lot earlier than we normally pre-tape. But,
in a different location as well.
right, we're actually at the Manhattan Neighborhood Network Firehouse for a change. So set up slightly different, but we will try to do stuff that actually is going to be germane when the show airs next Monday. So we know that hurricane relief, hurricane rescue, hurricane news will still be in the forefront. So what was the latest that we heard? One, on casualties on the latest one, Irma.
I don't know what the final figures are. I think they're still coming in. There was a lot of devastation. There were bodies that were, I hate to say it, but it's probably accurate to say that there were probably casualties that were washed away in the flooding, bodies buried under debris.
By the time we air,
they'll still be digging them out. But
it was in the 30s if you count the Caribbean devastation and you count the Florida devastation. I think it's the low 30s when we're taping.
Right, but the final count's
yes,
not
it's still going to be rising.
And Mexico had a big earthquake in the middle of all of this. I don't hear anybody talking about that.
Well, there are two things that I've had people. Matter of fact, there was some discussion on a couple of my Facebook friends and feeds, and there was a lot of discussion about the fact that you had millions, close to hundreds of thousands dying in monsoons in Asia. And then we had the Mexico earthquake and the Mexico hurricane, and not many of those stories were being mentioned. Actually, there was a bare mention of the monsoons in Asia. Actually, there was water killing people all around the globe, for real. So but the story wasn't being covered.
Not major.
Much as we would have liked it to
coverage
have
in
been
the U.S.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame. Yes, we need to take care of ourselves first, but we can't ignore what's happening in the rest of the world. I mean, we lost houses. Unfortunately, we lost lives, but in other places, entire communities were wiped out. I mean, entire neighborhoods destroyed.
I know the Caribbean islands, there was major devastation in St. Martin's, St. John, St. Thomas. Cuba was slammed phenomenally.
Absolutely.
But the cumulative effect of all this, first of all, you had a story on Mexico and Mexico's reaction.
Well, Mexico was offering aid to the U.S., which was never
This
acknowledged.
was after Harvey.
This is after Harvey. And they were, the governor of Texas, John Abbott, I believe his name is, said, yes, please.
Happy to have all the help.
Happy to have all the help we can get. The President of the United States did not acknowledge their offer at all. Nor did he offer condolences after their tragedy.
About either, not the earthquake, not the hurricane.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Nothing.
All right.
No word from the Squeak House.
All right. So we're not going to get into into that because we've
We
already talked about
do,
the lack of presidential anything that's currently occupying our White House. But the interesting thing about these kinds of disasters, they're going to impact how this nation governs in the immediate future, because they have to deal with passing all these continuing resolutions to keep the government open, voting to provide aid. The deal that Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi cut with Donald Trump that allowed for quick passage of the aid for Harvey, which people are saying still wasn't enough allocated for that disaster. So when you put the estimate that's come down the pike now, by the time we air, the combined disaster total that I've seen in writing right now is something like $290 billion. And I'm going, well, that might be hyperbole. One can't tell. But when you look at the ravaged state of Florida, right across the state, and you look at the way Houston and Texas and Louisiana were hit by Harvey, that may be right on target.
It may as well be. Do you recall what the final figure was for Katrina?
No, I
But I think it was up there. It was up there. Yeah, that's a lot of money. A lot of damage was done.
Well, now, besides hurricane news, one of the other main things that hit big, and there will be repercussions because I believe the state of California has just filed suit against the federal government because of the president's rescinding of DACA. And the dreamers, just in the state of California, they're talking about their economy being hit in the billions, anywhere from $1 to $10 billion, because these dreamers that have been here, lived, got educated, are in the workforce. By stripping them out of the workforce, just the cost to the economy of their productivity leaving and having to retrain new workers, they're talking about billions of dollars just in the state of California. So now if you multiply that across the country, and the California Attorney General is not the only one. The state of New York has filed suit against the federal government because of the DACA. But it's interesting, I don't know if you saw that story. I believe that Eric Schneiderman in the state of New York was filing suit not on economic or constitutional, it might have been constitutional, but it had to do with projected animus and race-based reasoning for why. And I would have to call that story up because when I heard the grounds for the suit, I was totally surprised. But when I listened to the articulation of it, it actually made perfect sense. They just delineated, he did this, he said this, he does this, and this is the effect, this is the effect. And it was that's one we're going to have to revisit because the DACA story will be with us, and I'm going to really want that. But interestingly enough, in Richard Prince's journalism, we haven't done Richard Prince's aggregation of news in quite some time, and Richard Prince is one of our go-to online aggregators of news folk. But he had a very interesting twist on the DACA story in that the University of North Carolina editor said, quote, DACA students still welcome on staff. I'll open that one up and give you a little quote from it. UNC editor, DACA students still welcome on staff. Quote, the only requirements I have for people wanting to join the Daily Tar Heel are that they work hard, are willing to learn about journalism and contribute to the nearly 125-year-old mission to accurately report the news. Tyler Fleming, editor-in-chief of the Tar Heel student newspaper at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, wrote last week. So the interesting thing is pushback against the administration deciding they're going to slam the door on these dreamers and try. Now, I understand that the president claims he's doing this because he wants a comprehensive immigration and he wants Congress to step up to the plate, but because he knows that this is a non-functioning Congress, when he punts it to Congress, it doesn't get done, my estimation, and so 6 months is the window. After that, hell, I saw another headline on the Prince aggregate. Let me see if I can find that one, because it was something like ICE. Yeah, here it is. Looks like I misplaced it, but the headline was something like, ICE was already targeting Dreamers before the DACA decision was made. So this quote, this tweet that the Dreamers don't have anything to worry, the Dreamers and their folk aren't putting much stock in that.
What's the grace period on this?
6 months was the
6 months.
time period that he put on that. And then one of the other interesting stories that we're going to keep visiting, because I'm going to try to get Dr. Alan Singer on with us to talk about this whole statues and Confederate statues.
Well, yeah, that's an.
But it's going to be an ongoing debate.
Yeah.
In journalism,
we're going to have to tear down half the statues in the world if we start.
No, not necessarily. This is a very interesting discussion, because you start talking about who are people who actually did good, even though they were flawed, and who are people who are actually bad people who did bad things, like treasonous stuff against their country and holding other people as bondsmen and stuff like that. Those are people that you don't want to keep around anywhere. You can get rid of. But the people who are flawed, did good things but had some flaws, you may want to put them in their museums, do whatever you need to do regarding educating the general population about why they're no longer in a position of honor, but because they did good in their time period, we don't just consign them to the scrap heap.
Right, but how do you define flaw?
Oh, I'm sure there'll be a lot of commissions and a lot of discussion, and it's not going to be amicable in certain places, and it's going to probably be like the folks did in reconciliation and whatever in South Africa, where they actually managed to come out of that apartheid stuff and have a halfway decent, we're not going to chop off your head and kill you. I'm sure this country is going to eventually evaluate which one of these. It's going to be interesting to see who's on the commission that Mayor de Blasio sets up to take a look at statues in New York. But the commission is going to have to take a look at not just statues in New York, they have to take a look at place names. You're going to have to take a look at all kinds of stuff. But I have no problem with that. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right.
I'm just thinking about all the statues that I'm aware of that I've seen growing up. Do we remove? Okay, we want to get rid of Robert E. Lee's statue. Why?
Because he was a treasoner traded to the country. And he was a person who believes in holding other people as slaves. He fought to keep other people as slaves. I mean, and they're.
Do you think Washington would have fought to have kept his slaves? Jefferson?
He freed some of them, so I'm assuming he probably would not have destroyed the country just to save his slaves. Jefferson freed some of his slaves and did some halfway decent things. So I'm going to say, yeah, we can put him off in a museum somewhere. Okay. I don't have a problem with that. You need to actually not erase this history. People need to know who these people were and how dastardly they were. Here's the difference. I'm tired of people revering these dastardly people, but re-educate the population, put them in whatever museum you want to, and let people know exactly who they were and what they did. I think we'd be much better off for that. But don't be putting them out there in my public space where my tax dollars are paying for them, because they were dastardly people. So,
how about Christopher Columbus? I've heard talk about people wanting to
I'm sure Native Americans will tell you he needs to go somewhere in some museum somewhere. And I'm sure Italians are going to say, no, he's the father of discovery. Well, guess what? He didn't discover anything.
And he wiped out a lot of people in his.
That's my point.
In the course of his discovery.
And so flawed. Big discussion on Christopher Columbus.
That should be interesting. I'm curious to see what happens.
I'm not. I hate it when people vandalize these statues.
I do too.
I hate it because it just gives fodder to the other folks who say, see, those are a bunch of radicals, they don't know anything about civil discourse and blah, blah, blah. And so they play into the hands of their opponents. You need to vandalize these statues. All you need to do is educate people, get people aware of who they were, and say, yeah, put them over there. Put them in this museum. Tell people how much good they did, how little good they did, how much evil and dastardly stuff they did, okay? That's where I come from, and I think we can have that discussion and we can make that progressive move in this country. But this debate, like Richard Prince was saying, editorials debate statues of Rizzo. Now you know who Rizzo is?
Oh, yeah,
Philadelphia.
sure I do, yeah,
You remember we did move. This is the guy. They got a statue. When I discovered they had a statue of Rizzo in Philadelphia. See my point?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
That's another Italian. The Italians don't want to come down.
And I'm sure they consider him.
Stephen Foster. There's a racist statue of Stephen Foster somewhere out in Cleveland somewhere. That's another whole story.
I'm sure.
and Columbus. Those are just three of the things. But anyway, but those are issues that a show like Media Watch needs to focus on and needs to have serious discussion more than once, and we will. We will revisit that. Now, the other thing that hit last week, I'm saying last week because when we air it'll be last week, was the previous Sunday, was Steve Bannon's interview with Charley Rose. And so you've seen some feedback and fallout.
I've seen some feedback. Unfortunately, I missed the entire interview. I hope it's still on 60 Minutes overtime.
It probably is. It probably is. There were a couple of interesting bites that he had, but what I liked, and I laughed as soon as it came out of his mouth, because I watched the interview. Steve Bannon's talking about, America was built on its citizens. Its citizens. Stop telling me about this immigrant personality, whatever his quote was. He said, but Charley Rose said, but we're a nation of immigrants. We all come from somewhere. No, we're building our citizens. People like Alexander Hamilton, and he started naming them. Hold it. The first name he said was Alexander Hamilton, and I almost fell out the chair laughing because, as you know, and I know, Alexander Hamilton is an immigrant from somewhere in Nevis or St. Croix in the Caribbean. So the founding father that he's talking about, those are the citizens that we built this on, is an immigrant. So now the late night guys have been having a field day with it.
I'm sure they have been.
I missed the Trevor Noah take, but I caught it up on my Yahoo feed. So Trevor Noah quoted whatever he said. So you understand that I had our staff check on Bannon's people, right? He said, well, Bannon's people actually, his great-great-great-grandfather, I think it was one of those great-greats, actually came in here from Ireland just before 1850, a little earlier than 1850. He said, this was Noah, I'm quote paraphrasing. So he kind of walked into America when there was no passports, no visas, no nothing. So basically, he's a dreamer. No, he's a dreamer. And Noah,
dreamer. Right.
And his great-great-great-great-grandson's a goddamn nightmare. So, you know, but the part about the Bannon interview that caught my eye was the bit about why Governor Christie didn't have a job with the Trump administration. Bannon went, hell, you're either with a man or you're not with a man. And the Billy Bush weekend, you know, the Donald Trump quote about grabbing them by the short hairs in the genitals. If they weren't sticking with him through that, then they weren't on the team. And according to Bannon, he said, well, I told Christie the plane leaves at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. You're either there or you're on it. If you're not on the team. And he wasn't on the plane, so he wasn't on the team. So supposedly that's why Christie didn't get a cabinet post in the Trump administration. Christie was on the PBS NewsHour and what's the blonde who hosts the CBS?
Oh, I don't know. I thought all the blondes were at Fox.
No. I keep confusing Leslie Stahl and she was the co-host with Gwen Ifill. Yeah, you know. Mental blank right now. But anyway.
Well, I did a story.
Judy Woodruff.
Oh no, that's not who I was thinking of.
So.
Judy Woodruff. Yeah.
So. Judy says, "What about that quote? Christie's that conversation never happened." you know, Bannon's not in the White House, right? So how much on the team could he be on? And if I wasn't on the team, why was I doing debate prep? Why was I doing so? That's his last 15 minutes of fame. This is Christie on Bannon, and I hope he enjoys it. I said,
I hope
shit,
it is
that's
his
like,
last 15 minutes.
I said,
of
I'm
fame.
listening to these two guys. This is the guy who basically shut down Fort Lee because he was pissed and skated getting prosecuted because people wouldn't roll. But he's sitting there pointing fingers at Bannon. so the two of them, I'd love to see the two of them duke it out. That'd be great. So I'm sure there'll be more fallout from the Bannon interview. I saw a headline that said, Trump White House fielding fallout from Bannon interview. Hey, well,
Did you see where somebody was criticizing CBS's editing and accusing them of making Bannon look like a drunk?
Oh, I kind of heard that people were upset because they did such a great job of his pancake makeup that he looked almost like a normal person. But then I saw another comment somewhere up on Facebook says, yeah, but they couldn't hide the bloodshot eyes. So maybe that's what they're talking about. But the Bannon thing will have its fallout. But the key thing for me, which is crucial, even though it may be not what he really wanted people to take away, his thing was Trump's firing Comey may have been the worst
mistake,
political mistake of the last century.
Well, there's a
modern
long. Trump's got a
political
long list of those.
Yeah,
I think.
But you know what these hurricanes and earthquakes and all that stuff has done, and I'm sure Donald Trump is smiling, is taking the Russia story off the front page. But what I like about the Russia story is, while it's not on the front page, that special prosecutor, or whatever his real title is, Bob Mueller, is quietly zeroing in. He's still...
They've been very quiet over there.
Well,
Mueller and his guys.
There's an interesting thing. I saw another earlier headline that Republicans were being a little bit worried because it looked like Robert Mueller was... Oh, here's the headline. And this is a Newsweek headline. Mueller is, quote, going for the kill on Trump-Russia investigation, Republicans believe. So a lot of the Republicans, even though it's not on the front pages and not being talked about, they're a little worried about what the heck's going on in that investigation. So I'm pretty much guessing that Mueller's paying no attention to anything anybody is doing, because you understand that Devin Nunes, the guy who recused himself, that House Republican guy who said, "Oh, I'm compromised," he unrecused himself. He's now launched another investigation, supposedly to go back into the unmasking. You remember when the Democrats supposedly unmasked certain names that were caught up in the intelligence scan? So he's trying to launch another investigation of the Democrats in the or the people in the Obama administration, whether the Democrats or whomever. But guess what? Another scoop from
another smoke screen.
Top Republicans attempt to steer the Trump-Russia probe toward unmasking may be about to blow up in their faces. Because now they have to worry about what that intelligence unmasking stuff has to say about who in the Trump administration may have been trying to reach out to the Russians. So they may have opened up that part of the probe even deeper for the special prosecutor.
Yeah, his son-in-law just they just skated right through his interview.
Who?
Whatever Trump's son-in-law's name is. I don't know. I don't keep
Jared Kushner?
Yeah, that guy.
Well,
and you know, I just wanted to see if I thought they had dirt on Hillary. Bullshit. Excuse my language.
No, that was his son that won. Loved
Was
it.
it? Oh,
that was
no,
his
it's the
son.
son. I can't tell them
But
apart. They're all the
Kushner
same
was
thing.
at the meeting.
And Kushner
He was invited. He was there.
No,
Paul
no, he
Manafort was
there.
there. A whole bunch of folk was there. Okay.
Well, it's going to come out. It's all going to come out.
Aside from politics, there's one other key story that we need to touch on because there's some stuff that you need to be looking out for, folks. Equifax. Equifax was hacked, broached. 143 million people's stuff may be out there on the dark web. If the dark web is something you don't know about, folk, it's that other internet where all kinds of nefarious things happen.
And Equifax is trying to sell you data protection.
Yeah, Equifax is supposed to give you free protection, but they're only offering it to you for 1 year, right?
Yeah.
12 months.
And they have a for-pay plan.
After they lose your data, put you at risk, now they want to sell you something.
Right,
I sure
exactly.
hope the FCC or somebody is going to be launching an investigation and be filing charges. But guess what? I've already seen a website that says, come to this site to sue Equifax.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Folks, you can't believe what's popping
it.
up because of the Equifax. But there is a very interesting New York Times article that I saw yesterday, which would be last Monday when we air, and it says Equifax's website is totally confusing. Assume that your number is in the dark web. These are the steps that you can take now.
Right.
So look for that New York Times article, folks. It's going to be something that's useful to you. And the key thing that they recommend is to just put your accounts on a credit freeze immediately. It doesn't cost you anything, or if it does, it's very minimal compared to what these people are going to charge you for protection. And you can freeze it on all 3 credit bureaus. And that's the safest thing because nobody can open any crazy accounts in your name once that credit freeze is on.
Right.
I intend to do that. What do we got?
But I just want to say, in the short period of time that we have left, if you find out that your email address, if you do a report and it comes back, well, your email address is out there. Your email address is out there anyway. It's a scam to get you to spend your money. Everybody's got your email address. If you've ever emailed anybody at any time, bought anything with your email address, it's out there. So don't be frightened by that.
Hey, listen, folk. This is about the end of this show for Media Watch. This has been Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And we'll catch you the next time. And we're somewhere up on Media Watch on YouTube at Media Watch EVT, ED.